Hi, Sid Dobrin here with Inventive Fishing, and I've been thinking. I've been thinking about the absolutely terrible decisions the National Park Service made in the release of the new General Management Plan for Biscayne National Park earlier this month. According to the National Park Service, the latest iteration of the GMP is, quote, designed to restore the park's coral reef ecosystem and improve visitor experiences. According to the National Park Service, the plan is a guide for perpetuating natural systems, preserving cultural resources, and providing opportunities for high-quality visitor experiences for the next 20 years. The Park Service is clear that increasing pressure from recreational use, fishing, and development have taken a toll on Biscayne National Park over the past few decades. So, the new GMP includes a, quote, no fishing marine reserve zone that will cover a 10,000 plus acre area of the marine reserve. That's 6% of the park now off limits to anglers. And that includes a full 30% of the reef area, which is one of the most productive fishing areas in the region. So this area is being closed off to anglers, and the closure is being touted as, quote, the primary tool used to improve the declining reef's condition. The primary tool? No. Closure should be the last resort effort, not the primary first effort. What happened to more conventional and proven management strategies like gear restrictions, bag limits, size limits, quotas, and the likes? Amputation should always be a last-ditch effort, not your opening move. And to make this even more problematic, the National Park Service makes no bones about it. The purpose of the closure is that, are you ready for this? Is that it allows snorkelers and divers opportunities to experience healthy and natural reefs. What? So the indicated notion of restoring reefs is just an excuse to let one industry take precedence over another industry in access to a national park? This makes no sense whatsoever. Listen, I have nothing against divers in the diving industry. In fact, I think that anglers and divers need to be aligned in common marine conservation efforts. But here's what gets me about this approach to a reserve zone. I used to be a dive instructor, and we always had to spend an inordinate amount of time teaching divers how not to destroy reefs. Divers, particularly inexperienced divers, are a nightmare for reefs. So I'm just not buying the save the reefs for the divers position. Likewise, I'd like to see the National Park Service provide the scientific data that shows that such closures will ultimately benefit the reef and the entire ecosystem in the area. But the Park Service just hasn't been forthcoming with any science to support this closure. Look, I actually don't have any philosophical issue with closures in support of marine conservation and fisheries conservation, if they're supported with legitimate scientific data that shows that the closure is needed. But in this case, we just don't have that information. In fact, much of the information that the National Park Service has used to justify the closure is data derived from studies in 2001 which predicted the imminent collapse of the park's fisheries. A collapse that has certainly not taken place in these last 14 years. Likewise, 2 years ago, the National Park Service agreed to work with Florida wildlife officials to develop a strategy for the park's GMP that featured a permit system and a seasonal closure. Certainly not what everyone wanted, but a feasible plan nonetheless. But the Park Service backed out of those commitments to Florida wildlife. Now, this alone should be a big red flag, not just to anglers, but to everyone. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission oversees fisheries management for all of Florida, the state with the most registered saltwater anglers. There are 4.9 million of us, and that we deservingly call ourselves the sport fishing capital of the world. Yet the Park Service doesn't see the FWC's input and management approaches to be worth adapting? This is another instance where local knowledge and states' rights are being ignored in favor of federal management. This is a dangerous way not only to manage fisheries, but a dangerous way to think about management in general. I tend to think about things ecologically, try to think through the connections, see the bigger picture. And it seems to me that you can't look at one management plan without thinking about how it connects to other management plans and to the larger ecosystem of management thinking in general. So beyond just the evident problems with the Biscayne closure, this closure adds to my growing concerns over closure mentality. Because when we take the Biscayne closure into consideration, along with the Dry Tortugas closure, the possibility of further closures enacted by the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary 5-year review, closures along Cape Hatteras, closures at Cape Lookout, and so on, we're starting to see recreational anglers being shut out, not only of access to the waters all Americans should have access to, but to the very processes through which management of those areas is being determined. So here I am, once again at the end of one of these videos, reminding you that there are more than 11 million recreational saltwater anglers in the United States, and we need to make sure our common voice is heard when we say that these kinds of closures are inappropriate management plans. So join me in letting those in power hear that the Biscayne National Park General Management Plan should not, must not exclude recreational anglers. A revised plan which balances legitimate, data-driven conservation efforts and egalitarian access for the park visitors is needed. In its current form, the General Management Plan is not designed to create a marine preserve or marine protection area. It is nothing more than a federally imposed no fishing zone, and that is not right. Fish on. Can't.